Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Anthony's Customs, and for this video we are looking at the SH Figuarts Avengers Age of Ultron Captain America. Before we get into anything else, I'm going to show you guys the package since a lot of you ask to see those kind of things. So here it is. It's got some nice little figure art down here, no pun intended. Captain America, same artwork again, and then some very basic posing options which do look pretty good. And then on this side you get another stance. So it's a nice window box, pretty standard for the SH Figuarts. Before we get into the figure more, I'm going to do a quick comparison between the Figma, even though it's from the first movie, and this one, because I'm sure a lot of you are wondering which one is better off. And they're different, obviously, because this one's styled like a Figma, and this one's styled like an SH Figuarts figure, and this one's from the first movie, and this one's not. So they're really not comparable figures, but they're as close as we can get, so let's take a look. The Figuarts one is definitely bigger, and they have different proportions. Some people are probably going to prefer the proportions on this figure, despite the styling issues. This one I think personally has better proportions, but this one has much more detail throughout the outfit, and we'll go through that in detail. But you know, they're both different, so I can't say one is better than the other. If you want this look, then this one's fine. If you want this look, then this one's fine. I don't think there's really any need to compare the two beyond that. So that's all we're going to do. Now this figure stands roughly, and he's pretty much straight up and down right now, 15.5 centimeters, which makes him just over 6 inches tall. So he's not technically in scale with like your standard domestic 6-inch figures like Marvel Legends or something, but he's close enough that you should be able to get some poses done and it'll look okay. Now let's look at the accessories. This guy's got kind of a lot of accessories, so let's do the hands first. First thing is he comes with the 2 fist hands, and those come on the figure obviously in the package, so that's why they're there. We have 2 kind of relaxed hands, or kind of grappling hands. If you want to put them in a fighting pose, you could do that. So we've got those. We've got these hands, which are the more open style pose hands. And then we have these hands, which are meant for particular use, and I'll show you that in a minute. That's why they have those keyed tabs on there. But we have those. You could also use them for saluting or something like that. And then we have these hands here, which are meant for holding the shield, obviously. And we'll talk about those again in a little bit. So speaking of the shield, we have a shield, and it looks pretty good. I'm okay with it. The paintwork isn't as clean as I was expecting it to be from Figuarts, but as you can see, it's pretty much there. It's not really a problem. It's just not 100% perfect. No big deal though. And then on the back side, we don't have any straps. We have these removable handle pieces. So what you have to do is pop these out, which is kind of a pain in the butt, but that's okay because they do eventually come out. So same on both sides. So you pop that out, and then you have a variety of options. So your first option is to use the hand piece. Now the problem with that is these are, well, that one's gone. Let's use this one. These are sculpted in here, and they are not the right shape. If you look, they're angled. They don't peg in properly. So this one's better than the other side, but it still doesn't peg in right. I don't know if that's just mine and they got smashed or something, but they don't work properly. Let me see if I can grab the other one really quickly. Every time I drop something while I'm doing a video, it is nowhere near within reach, so I have to cut the video. Okay, so if you look at this one's even more out of shape than the other one. It doesn't peg in properly at all. They don't even line up. I mean, you can get one in, obviously. Then you really have to force it in order for it to work. So hopefully that's not a common issue. Otherwise, it's a big pain in the butt. And they're usable, but that's really not good. It doesn't really make sense that they're so misshapen. Whatever, I guess. Alright, so we have another option, and this one looks like this, and you peg it in like that, all the way though. I'm not going to do it for now, but you do that so you can use this peg to put it on his back, or you can use this peg to put it on a display stage to make it look like he's throwing the shield, which is a really cool feature. I'm glad they included that. This one gets used in conjunction with one of the hand ones, so you'll put the hand on there and put this one on, and that's his forearm piece. Okay, so this isn't going to get used alone. And then the last option is a clear one, which pegs on like that, and that's what these hands are for. So what you'll do is you'll peg this hand into here. You'll probably already have placed this on the wrist. Obviously that just snaps on the wrist. Be careful with this though. Acrylic like this is super fragile. So put the hand on the actual figure. I'm just doing it like this to show you. Snap this onto the wrist and make sure this is keyed in here. like that, and it fits nicely. And then you can kind of tuck the shield in and then peg the shield in, and now you've got the throwing or holding the shield accessory, which works really well. I'm glad they designed it this way. It actually works very, very nicely. I guess I can throw his hand on there real quick, even though you're supposed to do it in the other order. Put the hand on first, but we can do it. What the heck? That's how we do it around here. So as you can see, he holds the shield in no problem. Of course, you can see the support from the bottom, a little bit from the side, but even then, really nicely done. And he can hold it. It's not too heavy or anything, so really, really, I love that. That was probably my favorite feature of this figure. They just nailed that. So I'm kind of harping on that a lot, but it's impressive when they do something like that, and I like that, and more figures need to have things like that done. Okay, so now the last two accessories, they're kind of connected literally and practically, are the head and the eyes. So we have an interchangeable head. That's the first one, and that's the second one. So we've got a yelling head and a normal head. And now I mentioned eyes. So we get interchangeable eyes. We don't get posable eyes like the Figma. Interchangeable. And this is a problem because this one's okay, except his right eye is a little bit low, and the eyes sit a little bit too far back, but they don't look too bad. But let's put out in the other one. So you split the head in half, pull the eyes out. And the reason this isn't the best design, even though it's practically okay, you have to really nail those eyes. If they're not in the right exact spot, you're screwed. The posable Figma ones, if they're not in the right spot, you just move them and they're fine. So this was a big gamble, and it didn't necessarily work. So these eyes are probably lined up the best. The ones that look off to the other side. So you have a left side, which is these, a right side, which is the ones I just took out, and then the ones on the standard head. Now if you look, they're lined up pretty well, but they still sit too far back. You can kind of even see a gap in there. It's not super noticeable, but it is noticeable, so that's a little bit of an issue. And then we have these, which are the straightforward eyes, which mine are looking super up, especially this one. He almost looks like he's getting knocked out or something. So if you put his head down, it looks like he's looking forward, but they're really, really too high. So that's really problematic for me. I don't care for that too much. So hopefully they're not all like that. I don't think they are, but be aware of that issue. All right, so let's talk about the paint on this figure. For the most part, it's good. I mean, it's all there. Everything looks nice. It's not, again, it's not as clean as I was hoping for a Figuarts figure, and I know they're not always perfect, and that's fine, and still looks really, really good. We have little details like the Avengers logo. Those turned out pretty nicely. Most of the detail work turned out nicely. But you can see there's a lot of red where there's not supposed to be red, and it goes up onto the straps on both sides. So it's a little bit of a bummer. And then if you look at the torso, it's a little bloody here and there. If you look super close, it's not that big of a deal, but it is worth mentioning. And then things like this, we get the white spill off. It's not bad enough that I'm going to actually knock the figure for it, but it is something worth mentioning. It'd be nice if they were a little bit cleaner, since these things are getting more and more expensive. Although these aren't actually too bad, but still. Paint job is good, though. I like the way they did the different finishes, so this has more of like a leathery look, and then some metallics, and then a little bit of leathery looks here and there, and it's just nice. We have some different shades of brown in the boots, and the red continues throughout. Everything looks pretty good. I did notice, and maybe this is just because these are imports and they tend to have paler skin tones on their figures, especially with the Figma. I probably mentioned it in that review, I don't know if I did. He's super pale. In this one, he's also pretty pale, but not nearly as bad. The likeness is pretty good. Sculpt work all around is really good on this guy. You can see there's just tons of sculpted detail, so that really brings the figure to life nicely. As far as articulation goes, let's take a look. So the neck is articulated. It feels like just a single ball peg, but it moves around really nicely and freely, and it continues the sculpt work nicely, so that's good. For the head, we have a double ball peg. I think that's fine. A lot of people say, it should be a hinge, ball hinge, like on the Dragon Ball figures. Well, if you own those Dragon Ball figures, you know that hinge, it doesn't actually accomplish very much. So this is fine by me. For the shoulder, we have a hinge for the shoulder pad, which is kind of like a Robot Damacy figure, in that the hinge is independent from the arm itself. So you can move the arm, and the hinge can be on its own, so that's a good thing. But the shoulder joint is a ball peg, and hopefully you can see that, but the ball peg moves around inside the socket, then the socket itself is a butterfly type of joint, so you can bring the arm out that way. So it'll come out forward. You can see the hinge right there for the butterfly joint. You can kind of see that. That's how the arm moves in and out like that. Pretty good joint though. I think it looks good, and having the two-part for the shoulder pad works nicely for the most part. It fills the gap in pretty well, and then if you bring the arm up, it just slides down, so it works. I like that. And then the fact that it actually rotates with the arm is a very good thing. I hate it when shoulder pads are fixed to the torso. They almost always need to be connected to the arm, in my opinion. So that's a good thing. And then underneath that we have our bicep swivel. So it's full range of motion, nothing special there. We have our double jointed elbow, but this upper joint, almost useless, so that's a little disappointing, and I'll explain why in a second. The second joint works pretty well. We get better than 90 degrees, so that's fine. But the elbow pad is a separate piece. It connects to the elbow. But the way it's designed, it basically doesn't move. So we end up with this giant gap in the lower elbow. If this whole thing came around from that upper joint, if that whole thing moved, we'd have not only better range of motion, but it would also look better. So that's a little bit of a bummer. And then my elbow pads have both popped off. I had to stick them back in there. So be careful about those. They look really good when it's closed, but as soon as you open it, we do get some serious gapping. So it's a little bit of a bummer, but it's not too big of a deal. So that's okay. The wrists have actually significantly larger ball hinges than we're used to seeing on wrists. And that's a good thing, because not only does it make the wrist look thicker, but we have a much better range of motion. So they'll rotate at both ends and have the hinge. So that's a really good thing. For the torso, now I haven't pulled this apart, so I can't say 100% for sure what it is. It feels like a hinged ball peg. So a ball peg going down and a hinge at the top, I think, because it feels like this is a hinge and then this is a ball peg. I'm not 100% sure, but regardless, we get a really nice lean forward. It leans all the way back. Be careful though, because if you go too far, it kind of tucks under itself, and it's a little bit of a pain in the butt to get it back over like that. But it leans really far side to side. You do get some gapping in there, but I assume that's just to account for the peg moving forward. You can really get this guy posed all the way around, and then of course it rotates. So that's a good thing. Lower torso is on a ball peg, so that leans in every direction and rotates. It doesn't rotate a bunch. You're going to have to do most of that up here, but it does rotate, so that's a good thing. Belt is fixed in place. Crotch is fixed in place. We have hinged ball pegs for the hips. Now the problem I have with the hips, when they're up all the way, which they are right now, it should be a lot less gappy. We shouldn't be able to see the articulation too much. The thigh and the crotch should be touching. But they're not, so they're a little bit too wide, I think, and they need to just be filled in a little. And the interesting thing about these is normally we have this hinge down here to account for posability, but if you look, they go all the way out to the side up here, all the way at the top. They go mostly all the way forward. Of course, you can bring it down a little bit and go a little bit more, but it's almost not necessary even on this figure, and the only way to close that gap is to make him pinch his legs together like he has to go pee. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but again, it's not a huge deal. You can kind of account for it a little bit. Anyway, they do drop down so you can move the legs around, and you can hear this leg. It's a little squeaky. This one, it squeaks in this direction, but this way it's actually kind of loose, so be careful with that. We do have, so the ball socket in there, and then the thigh swivels around that. So you should be able to pose him no problem. It's just kind of an aesthetic issue, other than the one being a little bit loose, so that's no big deal. Double jointed knees, top joint, second joint, both work just fine. The kneecap fits a little bit better than the elbow pad does, so that's a good thing. Nice range of motion, it looks pretty good. And then for the ankles, we have a swivel at the top of the joint, and I'm assuming they designed these for aesthetic purposes because of that red stripe, because it's not a nice joint otherwise as far as looks go. But having this joint outside fixed, then the actual hinge on the inside keeps this piece in place. So we have the hinge, we have the swivel, and then where the hinge pegs into the foot, that gives us our ankle rocker also. And then if you need to rotate that around, you can play with the combination of those joints to give them whatever kind of ankle range of motion you need. And then lastly, we have a really nicely done toe hinge. So he's got basically the full spread of articulation. Everything looks pretty good. I'm really pleased with this guy, other than the fact that my eyes are a little wonky, and I can kind of play with that, and hopefully if I just push on these a little bit and kind of bend them down, I don't think it's going to work, but it might work temporarily since there really isn't much play in the area that receives them. Let's see how they look. Yeah, they're pretty much still looks like he's looking at the top of his skull. So that's a bummer. But everything else is really good. And I'm going to put him in some poses here so you can see him using his shield in action. And I really recommend this guy. It's a fantastic figure. Is it 100% perfect? No. Yeah, I'd say it's about 95. It's really good. And then I need to show you, I guess, this, because I mentioned it but I didn't show you yet. This little guy right here pops out. Be really careful because it is as tiny as it looks. And once you pop it out, it likes to just go flying. So be careful. Wow, I said careful really strangely. Be careful with this piece because it will be a pain in the butt to get out. And then once you do, good luck. So here's what we're gonna do. Kids, don't try this at home. Actually, I'm not trained at all. And I'm kind of not really a professional. So I won't say that. So you need to get that out. And then this is how you put the shield on his back. You peg that in there, and then you don't want this piece on there, obviously. Again, be careful swapping these out. You do not want to break them. This just pegs on to here. So there you go. All right, let me get him in some poses so you guys can see him in action. And make sure if you like this video that you actually click the thumbs up button. That does help me a lot and I appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see my upcoming figure reviews, custom figures, and other good stuff. And if you're looking to buy this guy, then check out the link in the description below and buy him. Big Bad Toy Store will have him in stock very soon, so make sure you get yours ordered before they sell out. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you like this video. I have many more coming down the road, so in the meantime, keep collecting.